Reflective Podcast.
Live and direct. Mr. Anderson, how are you today?
I am very good, sir. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you as well. Thank you for joining me on this station, this signal, this
It is my pleasure.
yeah. We met, just for those listening as context, we met in I think March or April of 2009, and I was kind of inquiring as to whether or not acting would be relevant as a pathway for me, and you were kind of a checkpoint. Do not pass go, do not collect $200 unless kind of moment. And quickly I found a home in your acting classes, and I found solace, and I found sovereign autonomy, coming from a family culture where I was really confused about like my baseline experience of identity. And I remember it was so attractive, this space that you created, because I had seen like the idea of a person wanting to be an actor, and this was an acting class for the actor to be an actor. And it was very much like a heady ambition space, of like, we're in Hollywood, these are the things you do. And then I came to your space and I saw you place emphasis on being. I saw you place emphasis on, an aspect of, you immediately referenced this kind of Buddhist lineage framework that you came from, which for me also was extremely magnetic, because I didn't understand it at the time, but I knew something was wonky with my upbringing in Roman Catholic Christianity. It was like something wasn't allowing me clarity about my own experience of identity. And then I got to be able to, write my own scenes and unearth these things in these classes and workshops with you over the past 10 or more years now. So I felt it would be an amazing tapestry of unknowns for us to just kind of walk into a field and a forest of conversation here today. And that's a little bit about how you came into my life and how I came into your life. But you just said a statement offline before we started of like, you don't see yourself as a great orator or you said something
No.
like a profound something or other. So I think that's a great place to start is, well, then who the hell are you and how do you see yourself?
The statement I think I made was, I don't see myself as a great orator of wisdom. So I guess if I was to look at the converse of that, I see myself as pretty ordinary. I see myself as someone who lives in practicality. I don't like to be too heady. I don't like to be too ethereal. So it's not too woo-woo and yet not too analytical. I try to live as authentically as possible, is who I see myself as being, and I fall down all the time, as we all do. So I started out in Hollywood with no idea what I was doing or what I was after. I think I started out for all the wrong reasons. I wanted to be somebody. I came to town with the idea of, I'm going to show them. I had a chip on my shoulder and I didn't feel heard. And I was going to show all of them that doubted me. But I think I was fortunate enough with the people I met and the things that I was involved with to get rid of the dysfunctionality of it, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I was able to, over the years, turn to where I think acting became a pathway for growth. A pathway, well, what's growth? Growth for me is moving beyond that which I already know. And in an effort to broaden my perspective about what life is. because I think, and it's the same thing I say about acting all the time. I think life is ridiculously simple. I mean, that's what makes it difficult, is that it's so simple. Acting is the same way. Acting is a reflection of life. If you are really acting and not pretending, acting is a reflection of living. So it is living as a process. And acting, therefore, is ridiculously simple. But everybody struggles at it because they try to make it so much more than it needs to be. And so I'm always trying to peel away the layers that keep me from being just as authentic as I can be. That's going to be a quest forever and ever and ever. You know, I think that's the journey. The journey is to continue searching. David Mamet said, you know, that all theater is really only pursuing two questions, all theater, from the beginning of theater. And that is, I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know when I'm going to die. And I sure hope I figure out why I'm here before I die. And I think he's right. I think we all just want to be loved, and we all want to have purpose. And I think everybody's struggling to find that. Most people end up in a defensive survival mechanism that makes them lash out. And I think that's the problem with the world today, is it's getting more and more intense, rats in a cage.
Well, let's talk about some of these problems. The word that has been ingrained, well, I mean, many words you've been responsible for ingraining in me. But the word compelling is definitely one. And it's like, you know, that reason we pull over on the side of or we can't help but look at the, you know, the car crash on the side of the road. It's like, it's a moment where life and death is very, very obvious, and it's compelling. It compels us. And
it's real.
So something that I explore, and this is obviously a topic that I would, let me do a couple of baton moments. One second. Well, one, it's like, okay, I see an interesting mirror between you and my father, whereas there's something that happens when great amounts of wisdom are simplified and integrated, and they're actually discounted as being inaccessible to the average perspective. And I've heard it be done by more than just you and my dad, but I find it an interesting concept, is like, well, if you don't see yourself as any level of exceptional, or you don't, not a profound orator of wisdom or anything like that, it's like, well, then why does your life reflect this level of order, or this degree of fulfillment, or this degree of being a kind of designated, you know, if let's say everything's quantum mechanics, and like, well, then if you know, this bottle is designed to put the liquid into my mouth in an efficient way. And it's like, well, regardless of what's, you know, what we'll call the tapestry that creates the, you know, the thread that creates the tapestry creates thread. This monkey looking creature that talks and does things is designed for something. And something I look at on this, not just on this show, but in my life as a theme, is what's the difference between not just others and self, but the version of myself that is fulfilled and the version of myself that isn't fulfilled. And not even just as a fulfilled of an outcome kind of thing, or satisfaction with life, but like that word compelling again comes up. Is like, you know, as I've probably told you here and there, like, it seems like my life is getting closer and closer to this guy named Kanye. And regardless of what other things could be said about how orderly aspects of his life are, there's something so compelling about this guy that's doing, it seems like, his dreams. And then I look at someone like my dad, it's like, man, why would anyone go to anyone for advice? Well, it seems like this person A has done something that person B now feels is deserving of inquiring as to what, how, you know, how to put one's life in a way where I'm inspired to live it. where, and this is, I've said multiple batons, and I don't know if I'm done yet, but it's like, the concept of mental health comes up for someone who isn't really engaged in a healthy way with their soul's calling, and yeah, mental health is probably a very relevant conversation for a degree of people that are in their inspired soul calling, but you can't, we've talked about it before, like Maslow's needs kind of thing. Like you can't think about striving and creating, your dream piece of art if you can't pay for groceries. And yes, we're all coming into this thing called life in our own subjective kind of initiation perspective, and you pop out there, I pop out here. My teacher in yoga, Will Dupree, talks about it as, if you want your thing called enlightenment, or somebody else wants it and it's called success, you might need +7 to get there for you. But the other person, what they want, they might need -4 to get to their version of it. So we're all moving towards our own kind of various versions of idealizing what we are, or utilizing what is here to be. We got a camera, we have a story. Well, there's a thing that we could do. It's called make a film. And there's higher degrees of making it and executing it. And it, like, wow, it looks really good. And then another version of it where it doesn't look as good and it's not as compelling. So I guess the baton that I'll hand back to you is like, okay, let's say you're a nobody and you don't have all this experience of teaching and the alignment that you do. How and why does that occur? And why did that occur? Looking at, I suppose, an outside perspective at yourself, like how did this alignment come to be? Where it does seem like I feel like wisdom is really just about learning from suffering and wanting to mitigate the suffering. And then someone else can see another person and be like, wow, you seem to have mitigated your suffering to a rather exceptional degree. How so have you come about this process? So I guess that's the question. Yeah. How so have you come about this process? There's many batons in there. So.
Yeah. For example, right here, as I sit here pondering what you just said and pondering what you asked me, there's little voices going on in the back of my head going, you don't have anything to say. What are you doing? There's nothing here. Oh my God, what are you going to talk about? So that's very human. We all have those voices, but those voices in my life as a young person used to be hugely loud, and they would take over, and I would have to prove something, or I would have to be somebody, or it would all be ego driven. It would all be a form of protecting myself, of looking good, of coming off like I know what I'm doing so that I won't be rejected, because if I'm rejected, then I won't be able to survive. And then I'm going to die. We're all in a survival mode, because we are a creature that strives to survive. And I think as we grow and have experiences, because I look at my life in my 20s, let's say, arriving in Hollywood, and I was a basket case. I mean, I was all over the place, a mess. I remember blowing it on an audition and coming out and sitting on the curb in a parking lot and weeping because of what a fool I had been, and that I would never work in this town, and I was just a piece of trash. And I went into my apartment and I didn't come out for 2 months. Lived in a bathrobe and ate cereal, and I was a basket case, because I was so wrapped up in I have to look good and I have to be somebody and I have to do something that's important. And of course, that's all nonsense. It's all just an attempt to create a shell that will protect me, that I can jump from.
Would you say that is what the ego does when it's not integrated? It tries to, what's the difference between a functional version and a dysfunctional version of that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I felt in that period of time in my life very dysfunctional, that everything was run through a dysfunctional sieve, that I was checking in with everything and going, am I looking good? Am I, which comes down to, am I going to survive? Now, to answer the question, how do I be who I am now? Well, you got to put 70 years in there of experience. And I just mean not that I have been on a road of enlightenment. I haven't. I've just been on, after I consider, a road of practicality, of just what works. I just want to do what works. And after a while, beating myself up and being that dysfunctional and ending up sitting on a curb weeping because I didn't get an audition or blew it in my own mind was not working. And so my pursuit of my life was just, I had to find what worked for me, to live a full life, to live without having to feel I was going to die all the time.
Now, I would never try to sway you into using the word enlightenment or anything that's in my lexicon more fluidly if it's not natural for you. But what I am interested very openly in doing is demystifying the whole idea of enlightenment. Because I think it's because it's gotten really heady. And then I think it's created wars, and I'd like to zoom in a bit on that, because let's just keep it on like functional versus dysfunctional. I think, you probably out of all humans in my life saw me at a point very realistically between like 2011 and 2013, where I think I was very genuinely, I was mostly sound mind body. I kind of always had a big heart, but there was a point where I was really flirting with a line of like severe dysfunctional living, and I wasn't sure what the remedy. The concept, here's these primary concepts that for me have become part of my testimony for what works and what doesn't work. I think what really fucked me up was this idea that I had to wait on Jesus, or that only way that I was ever going to be okay was through this hand of this guy named Jesus. But other than that, I was fucked. I found that very very unfortunate. I was just like, geez, well, I gotta just wait. And I had some mystical experiences, and Jesus was like, no, bro, get up off the couch and do it. I'll ride with you, but you got to do it. I found of incredible magnetism to wanting to understand the difference between soul and ego. Like those two terms felt relevant. They felt relevant for me to understand, because in all the talking about it, it's like, wait, what are we talking about? How do you reference the thing that's doing the referencing? And I'd love to hear any like thing that you feel called to share on that, because I know you moved into this. Can you maybe speak about how your lens of this kind of like Buddhist, you had a shift, you know what I mean? Like, don't call it enlightenment, let's not, but like a utility shift. Your framework shifted as to how you were navigating your internal experience.
I mean, I was brought up in a very, Protestant Christian background. Although it didn't take very well, and I was the rebel of the family. Yeah, Buddhism had hit me really hard. I started guiding treks in the Himalayas back in the 80s. And it was really because, again, I was following whatever was right in front of me. It's all I've ever done is follow what's in front of me. And to give a little point of reference, I was beat up as an actor. I wanted a break. And so I wanted to do something that had nothing to do with Hollywood. And it ended up to be rock climbing. And then rock climbing was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was right in front of me. And that led me to go, wow, I want to go to the mountains. Let's go to Nepal. And so I found a way to go to Nepal. And I was never on this driven course. So it wasn't like, okay, I got to put my nose to the grindstone and be an actor. It just sounded like, oh, being an actor, I think that's fun. That'll be fun.
So it was like a joy compass more so.
Yeah, it was like, what is feeding me? What am I really connecting to? I've never really considered myself an actor. I mean, I had a career, 45 years doing it, but it was like something I played at. It wasn't a career. It wasn't something I don't feel I was ever called to be an actor. I was definitely called to be a teacher, and I was definitely called to be an adventurer, but I was not called to be an actor. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. Going to Nepal was really just a whim. And then it became something else. Then I started to guide treks to Nepal, and then I met a lama in Kathmandu, who
is this this story?
You mean the two heads coming together?
I feel like Tavo said it recently. He's talking about you had come to somebody and asked, and then like hit you on the head or something, or there's something with your noggin got hit.
That was the Sakyang Mimpam, who was he was the son of Chongang Trungpa, who was the head of Shambhala training, Shambhala Buddhism. And I met the Sakyang, and he happened to be coming through Los Angeles, and I went to a talk of his, and he had a book, quite a wonderful book called Turning the Mind into an Ally. And I loved it, and I took it up to him. What I wanted was I wanted him to sign it, but he wasn't doing that. And I just brought my book up, and I leaned forward, and he bent down and banged his head against my head, and it was like this shock. And he goes, "Now you're here," and because I was all glassy-eyed and, "Oh, it's the Sakyang," and he was saying, "No, I'm just a man too." And then he looked at it, and I said, and I told him, I said, "I really love your book." And he said, "Good." And it works. And he was right. He was doing the same thing that I look at now, and I talk to my students about. I said, just do it. Just do it. Just stop trying to do it. Just do it. Stop trying to be a character. Character will happen. You're not playing a character. You're not trying to be a person. You are one. You're already there. You came into the life. You were born complete. Done deal. There's nowhere more to grow. That's it. You've done it. We spend all of our trying in life trying to get back to that state of openness that we came into the world with. And what is openness? Openness for me is not trying to make something happen. It's about being in the process of living, and then things happen. But I'm not trying to make things happen. I'm not trying to get to a result. Results are a byproduct of you and being in a process of trying something. And then a result happens. You go, "Oh, but you had nothing to do with that result." It's like I have the problem I have with goals, setting goals. I understand goals, and I set some, but I like to think more in vision than goals. So because goals have such a result orientation, as opposed to, I'm going to move in this direction. I have no idea where it's going to take me.
I feel also a differentiation in framework here of, I think both of us had kind of a less than, and mind you, I had like beautiful people in my life that identify as Christian, identify as Buddhist, identify as Muslim. To me, it's like the person shows up, awesome, fantastic. When stuff gets glitchy, sometimes I'm like, well, I want to understand why the glitch is there as to potentially navigate it. So I see this kind of framework difference is like my experience of the Bodhi place, the Buddhid place is about, it's like, it's more, it's less linear, and it feels like this kind of modern Western, which I think the whole Western world became through this idea of like weaponizing the Jesus hero, and it's very masculine, and this, it's, you know, to the Father through the Son, and besides the point of the metaphysical like accuracy of these statements, it very much emphasizes masculine components, and it very much makes there an action to do. It references this idea of like inherent sin, that's like, oh no, actually it's the other way. You're actually fucked as a baseline. Your base level is you're fucked and you're dirty, and you got to do work to get clean. Yeah. And then that's called salvation. Yeah. And that fucked me up, because I'm like, well, why would this doesn't make sense. This scenario is, but then you find these other, I don't know if these are the right terms for it, but like heliotropic or omniscient or less linear based and more like integrative, or I guess that's the word, holistic, kind of comes in, where it's like, you know, yoga and Buddhism coming from this sector of the world feels like it activates a different sector of the soul as well, as a framework that just is meant to be helpful. You know, I say framework, but I mean like mental framework to process life through, that then kind of either provides an effective internal situation shift, or it doesn't. But also this idea of like letting go of that linear oriented aspect of living, it kind of frees up something in the human as well. I know it has for me, is like, by relaxing that attitude that wants, that desires, that sees it as not present but down the road, that then I have to create a character, or at least I have to create actions, and it seems like it's a part of the ego that creates a persona to do those actions, to then get the reward, which is acceptance or love, or, you know, now I'm worthy because I have done these things. And it feels like it always extends out integration. I remember one day I hadn't seen you in a long time, and you just looked me nose to nose and you said, "You look integrated." And my eyes watered, because it was like, I was like, oh man, I don't think I could have a better compliment in my whole life. Like, I just want to, you know, be together at one with the situation, not in fragmentedness with the situation.
It's the problem I have with Western religions, is that they're human. I mean, in terms of, they are ego structures. They're designed to create power. They're designed to build a power base, and the religion is doled out as a way of maintaining that power base. And that's not integrated, because you can't integrate, because you lose your power if it was integrated.
It makes you need a middleman also.
Yeah, exactly. So only through me do you get to God.
I also see that as this ultimate story of the ego. It's saying only through me you get the thing you want. And it kind of makes us need that persona and the narrative that the mind tells itself. And then you have the trauma to support it. And then there's all of a sudden, there's the you in front of you, which is, it's like the imposter syndrome, you know, scenario is at its like, it makes you need something you don't have, which for me, as you've heard me tell you about moon theory, it all comes down to feeling some type of feeling that something's missing that shouldn't be. But then you can just never be whole. It's a cycle that keeps you needing something that's not here, and emphasizing something that's not here. But I want to reframe and just move into this place of like inquiring into, well, then what's a practical tectonic, maybe it's like an internal situation that you've noticed is helpful to move away from that style of just straight up dysfunctional psychological functioning, and moving towards something more functional and practical?
It's stripping away, not adding on. You know, as I said a few minutes ago, we come out of the womb complete. Well, that would go against what you're talking about in terms of Christian faith, saying, you know, no, you come into the world, you know, fucked, and then you've got to find salvation. I think you come into the world pure, and then you get fucked up. And so then as you come to a realization about, I don't want to be fucked up anymore. So I got to start peeling away and throwing stuff away to get back to the simplicity of just being a being. And that is integration. For me, it's eliminating ego is integration, because then there's no separation between me and the rest of the life, the rest of the universe. You look at I look out, I got birds out in front of me here, and every single one of them is integrated. They're only present right now. Every single one of them is present. Every single one of them is only in the present. I look at my dog, he's only ever present. He's not in the past, he's not in the future. He's only, now he has memories. He knows that there's usually food there, so he'll go back to there. But when he's there, he's there. He's not back thinking about, should I go there? And the thing that separates us from the bird and from any creature, from any plant, from anything in the universe that isn't human is the prefrontal cortex. Because the prefrontal cortex creates duality and creates separation. Which is wonderful. It gives us perspective. We are, Brian Swim, the astrophysicist, he says, we are the consciousness of the universe, meaning we are the ones that step back and go, wow, this is amazing. Because the bird's not doing that. Cody's not doing that. He's just, you got a treat for me? Where we look out and go, oh my God, life is phenomenal. The universe is phenomenal. What a beautiful, beautiful, we are the consciousness that gets to applaud the universe. But the flip side of that is it creates separation. We're disconnected. I can't be present like that bird because I have this duality. I'm watching myself. A bird doesn't watch themselves.
So what did Shambhala do to switch that for you? How does Shambhala enter the situation? What does it provide?
It made me realize that if I wanted to live, I had to be willing to die. That death wouldn't be so bad if we didn't call it death. That living is, that half of living is dying. That the dying process and the living process are two sides of the exact same thing. That we have to, because what's dying? The process of dying is letting go. We look at the big death and we go, okay, I'm going to die. I'm letting go. I'm letting go of my life, and we're terrified because we don't know what's on the other side. I don't think we're afraid of the unknown. I think we're afraid of not knowing. We want to know what's out there. And so we don't want to die because we don't know what's over on the other side. And yet we deal with the dying process every day. You're in an interview and for a job or an audition, and you're going, oh God, I can't, and you're all strung out and you're nervous and you can't remember the lines and you're trying to hang on, and how do I make it work and how do I get it better? And finally you go, oh, fuck it. Oh, that was a death. You just died. You just let go. And the practice is letting go, letting go, letting go. How quick can you move? This is not my quote, I wish it was, but how quickly can you move from one failure to the next with enthusiasm? Because you fail, you fall down. That's a good thing. It's a release, and you will learn from it, because you can't learn from the status quo. You can't learn from everything going great. You have to welcome falling on your face. You got to welcome failure, because that's what's going to open your eye. That's what's going to give you perspective and able to see, like, wow, that didn't work. If you're ego bound, if you're survival bound, you're going to beat yourself up for it not working, because you're going to look bad, and because so you better beat yourself up to not do that again. As opposed to, if you're not worried about dying and let the failure happen, then you can look at it and go, wow, that didn't work. Well, let's try something else. But what did I learn from that? Oh, let me try this instead. And it'll take us somewhere else. So So you're always growing. But growing is letting go so that you can do something else and step forward. And then life becomes this open field to play in, because you've heard me say it in class. I tell my actors all the time, you got it. I think it's important, as not that you have to do this, but as an opportunity. I think it's important that you build a relationship with death. That the more you welcome your death, meaning you accept, okay, I'm going to die, don't know when, but I'm going to die. And I really don't want to die because I love living, but I want to live as much as fully as I can until I do die. And rock climbing for me really, really helped me more than anything build a relationship with my death. Because every time I go rock climbing, I'm aware that something could happen and I could die here. I've broken both legs in rock climbing falls, and have survived many other falls that were really close. I could have died, and I've had many friends lose their lives. So it is an activity that has risk. And I choose every time I go out to go, okay, I accept it. I could die today. When George Willig and I were climbing El Capitan, which is 3,600 vertical feet, right? Over 3 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. It took us 5 days to climb it. And we would talk about, hey, we're 3,000 feet off the ground, and we were talking about, hey, if you took the big winger, if the rope got cut and you fell the 3,000 feet to the ground, how would you spend that 30 seconds? What would you do with it? While we're hanging on the side of the wall, would you see how many somersaults you could do? Would you just panic and scream all the way down? That seems a waste of your last 30 seconds. Or would you try to save yourself? Would you plane out and try to clip the tops of the trees and maybe, not die, but then you'd be maimed with that? Would you want to live that way? Would you just pile drive, get it over with? So we were exploring all of these. And then the next night, I took a fall, a big one, like six-story building fall. And it was at night. So I had a headlamp on. All I could see is a little circle of light. And as I'm falling through the air, I had 2 thoughts. The first thought was, I hope something holds. And the second thought was, fuck, we never talked about falling at night. What if I don't get to see anything on the way down? I was very disappointed. And then I hit the end of the rope and it held. And then I couldn't wait to get back. I died and I couldn't wait to get back on the rock. I was so excited to climb. I wasn't scared. I had let go. And then I wanted to climb more than anything. Dying wouldn't be so bad if we didn't call it death. What we went through was a relationship with our death, and it allowed us to live full out. So I think that's what Buddhism, and I don't consider myself a Buddhist, but it really spoke to me. It spoke to me in living fully, living truthfully, living honestly, but allowing myself to be human, allowing myself to be flawed, to just be real and going, I don't have any idea. I really don't have a fucking idea what I'm doing, because I'm going to continue stepping into that which I don't know. And therefore, how can I know? I don't. I'm just going to move forward. And it's always, I have the same wide open eye view of the world that I did as a teenager. And I'm 70 years old. I don't feel 70 years old. I'm at the rock climbing gym all morning this morning, and I sprained a finger and I'm trying to climb without it, and I just found new rock that I want to climb in the spring that has never been climbed. And life is just, there's, as we say as climbers, so much rock, so little time. there's just too much rock in the world to climb in the time we have here. Meaning the life is to be eaten up. But you can't do that if you're trying to survive. I don't know if I answered your question.
I don't know if there was a question. One of the things that came up while you were painting was it's a piece in Moon Theory that it's like I just wanted to simplify. Like I remember one time you talked about it as like rising sun versus setting sun. Like you could see the same scene from the lens of despair, and it's not supposed to be that way. You can see the same setting. It can be perceived as wow, it's like same thing, but it's about the perceiver's kind of posture. And I started looking at and just sidebar of context, you know, after basically beginning my relationship with conscious ego death and making art for the purpose of like breaking through my own identity blocks. And I think you've known me, like I've been making music and I want to make film, like film and music. These are where I live. And I've never found in music the same kind of free form, open moldable clay, you know, interface that acting allows, which is like, you know, impulsive screams that aren't in key, and writing, you know, a scene that kind of burrows you into a chaos and agony, but you're doing it because you just feel that you need to grow into this particular place. So sidebar on that as being context of, you know, finding my relationship with, I wanted those ego deaths. Those ego deaths started becoming like, and I had to actually watch out for that too, because you start getting addicted to those, and then just normalcy of ease of living starts to be, you know, unwanted. And I think that creates a really kind of sadistic, twisted, dysfunctional archetype.
Yeah, it's another form of dysfunction.
But you know, around then, man, I ate some psilocybin mushrooms, and they showed me the shit that I thought I couldn't see. And then I drank this thing called ayahuasca, and it showed me a different thing. And then I really started having some progress on a tangible integration level with everything else with this thing called DMT. And I think it's very technical. And I think it's also very interesting that now there's companies like MAPS that are like legitimizing these as medicines. Like if we can take Tylenol and aspirin and caffeine, and these are all looked at as like they can be integrated in yes, regulated so that they're not abused, but anything can be abused really. But these are helping people move through PTSD. These are helping people have significant reclamations of themselves that they thought was permanently fragmented. So there's kind of another segue there, but back to the rising sun, setting sun thing. And I said all that as I think needed context as to why and how I can say this. I started looking at the different styles of egos that I encountered, and I saw them as belly buttons. I saw there were innie belly buttons and there were outie belly buttons. And I also got this, certified as a trauma therapist, and I started doing that work, which was very fulfilling because I was just pure servant. There's no reward here, just be with the soul. And I found that benefit because I received that work, and I was like, this is transformative. I want to know more about this and how the vagus nerve relates to the nervous system feeling okay. And someone talks about enlightenment, someone might just want to feel okay. That's their version of enlightenment. But I noticed this style that the ego behaved, or rather the varieties of styles that the ego behaved, and what traumas led to those different styles of ego adaptations. Some people were more interested in protecting themselves as a chronic identity, and it was more like a collapsed contraction. Some were chronically pushing themselves out into the world as a style of receiving attention, as a style of being the center of witnessing or whatever it is. So it's like some were more extroverted and some were more introverted. But I found this thing that I was really looking for was like equilibrium. You are a reference for me, and a couple other men that I can think of and women that I can think of right now, that something in their poise, they had a posture about them that looked, seems like the theme of the talk today for us, it looked integrated. It looked effortlessly powerful, but not from striving, from ease, from no effort. The effortlessness that happened at the pure baseline of just someone's authentic being, that more and more stood out to me as like, oh wow, it's like, you know, if I need to yell and I need to use my identity to communicate something too quickly because I don't know, there's a hot stove and a dog, or I don't know, I have to yell, I can do that. I'm not contracted so much around using my voice that I can't express myself, or if I need to protect myself, etc. Having that pliability, I feel like that's this my personal relationship with the growth of the ego, as it went from being very rigid and basically frozen in a contracted position to becoming pliable and movable, workable. I can work with it because and I think this is where I was coming from with the reference of the kind of the medicine work. And they talk about, you know, the word shaman in these different communities as being the kind of in-between world person, the person that has to have one foot in this world and one foot in the other world, and, you know, has a relationship with death because they've died 1,000 times. Now they can guide someone else in dying, and in dying there's rebirth, and in rebirth there's constant life. But this idea of looking at the ego as the thing that creates this veil of separation, it doesn't have to be there, but it's this identity that thinks the world's out there and I'm in here.
That's right.
And
yeah,
it
that's
seems
the problem.
It seems to be, it's like, I don't know, you know, what does the world need? I mean, more understanding about the way the human scenario functions with attention, perspective, consciousness, and the difference between the ego and consciousness. Unless you have something right away, I have a baton to pass.
Well, just on that,
yeah.
What was the last sentence you just said, if you can remember?
It's like, if the world needs anything, it's more understanding about the difference between the ego and consciousness, and how, you know, the scenario, I don't know, I said something like that, something about the scenario, the situation that is the multiplicity of components that we just take for granted and say, yeah, I'm a human being, but most people are disconnected from being, and they're in their head. And I think that's why individuals like us have said, hey, I'm looking around at my family, I'm looking around at my community. This is definitely not what I said, by the way, but I'm looking around at my scenario and something's not working. Something's not functional. These people are sad. These people are destructive. I got to find something that's more helpful, more fitting, more utility-based, obviously helpful. I don't know, I said something towards that line. Give you the baton?
Something that sparked, but I forgot it. So pass the baton.
Well, the baton was going to be, you know, you've worked with a number of people that I think most people would be like, oh, it's a famous person. Famous people are successful, right? Ooh, famous person. And yet you and I both had experience with people that are in celebrity and just as human as you and I. But something that I've kind of made my work is, one of the people that stands out most to me is Bruce Lee. And there's definitely probably some dysfunction in being that level of incredibly intense. And then you don't even get to see, you know, your mid 30s. I don't know how functional it was, but what inspired me was the mystical and the artistic kind of meeting in the middle. And also this phrase that he said of like, take what's helpful and discard what's not helpful, you know, and then add your own unique thing, and, you know, call it Jeet Kune Do, or call it finding your own style, your own flavor, your own sweet spot. But in working, I have a direct question here. In working with these embodied souls, because I don't think you can be successful unless you bring something to the table. Even if you're just a pretty face, you got to learn how to hold your pretty face and find the light, find the angle. You know, it's one of my studies of like really noticing on a case-by-case scenario, what is the difference between those who are really engaged in their life, and I call it missing out on nothing. When they're missing out on nothing, you know, someone who's really busy, like shout out to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, just seems like the guy's living a pretty fulfilling life. Like he's telling these stories. Yeah, there might all be actions, pretty much same action movie over and over again. But man, it seems like he's having fun. I can't deny that it looks like he's having fun. And it
No,
seems like
looks
he's getting
like
paid well for it. And people like Kevin Hart looks like he's having fun. And he's doing what he could be said to be designed to do. And it seems to be fulfilling. So my interest is like, what's the difference in your lens between those who are fully reflective of their potential and missing out on nothing, aka not missing out, some level of integration there, embodiment, and yet yada yada yada. What's the difference between those who are not missing out and those who are kind of stuck in that rut of identity of missing out on their dreams, missing out on the ideal health? Just talk about dreams and heady. What about just the version of your body that's functional and really feels good to be inside of? What would you say is this kind of predominant compass in your work with people who are very successful, specifically in acting and like embodying other characters and stuff like that? What do you feel like is one of, or maybe a couple of the pieces that compels a soul? Last tangent on this baton, because I feel like you must have looked at that as same thing in me. You're like, all right, this kid, let's see what he's got, let's see what he's made of. But then after a year or two, it's like, let's see if you either really want it, or we know people who have left LA because it just wasn't for them. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong, but there's also some type of alignment that we're talking about. What is that alignment when someone's doing what they're designed to do and they're fulfilled? And what's something you can say to those who feel like they're maybe not in that state of alignment? They're not fulfilled. They're not doing something that really drives them. Like, hey, dude, you woke up today excited to go to a gym, and you're 70 and you got these things. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's my study. It's not every human being in the world. I think we're evolving into this place, but I see people like you as mirrors for what's possible, mirrors of integration. You want to be like the guy that's sticking a needle in his head and getting a car accident, or you want to be this guy who's got a garden and seems to be farming his situation in the most productive way possible. So yeah, any kind of fulcrum in between those two situations. What is that?
Too many thoughts. I think the idea of a dream gets clouded with ego success. That we're all drawn to something. We go back to that idea of we don't know why we're here, and we don't know when we're going to die. And so we're trying to find out, what are we supposed to do? And what's my dream? What is my dream? Searching for the right thing, and I'll try this. No, that's not it. I'll try this. But if you listen, if any one of us just listens, we are drawn. We can't help it. I'm drawn to teach. I can't help it. I got this guy that texted me, a friend of my daughter's, never met the guy. And he says, I'm going to the Red Rocks to do some climbing. Maddie said you might have some ideas about what routes to look at. Over the next 5 days, I sent him pictures and texts that went on forever. Okay, well, if it's warm out, you want to climb on these 10 climbs. If it's cold out, these 10 climbs. Now, but if let's look at each one of those individually. And I went on and on and on and on and on. And then I felt like, oh my God, what have I done to this guy? Because it was like, here's somebody that needs some information, and I've got the information. Let me give it to him. That's always been there. That need to instruct, that need to teach. It's just who I am. Now, for me, it's about listening to and following those things that call you, because they're there from the very beginning. They are there. The other one that I'm very aware of is adventure. It's just, what's on the other side of that hill? I got to go see what's on the other side of that hill. I got to see if I can get to the top of this route on this rock. And we, but I think a lot of people get trapped into, oh, I had this one experience, it was really fun, and I'll make that my dream. But it's an intellectual connection to it. It's a buzz connection to it. And so they begin pursuing something that isn't really calling them. And I think that's an uphill battle. I'm not saying they can't be successful, but I think there's going to be a lot of pain involved and a lot of struggle, because I think they're approaching it for the wrong reasons.
So what's a practical technique that someone can do to differentiate the calling that's coming from their ego from the calling that's coming from their heart or their soul, whatever you'd call that?
What is it that really makes you feel good? What activity, what participation just makes you like, I don't know what it was, but it just felt so good. I felt so connected. I felt drawn. I just wanted to do it again. I felt that it's not intellectual. It's something that's felt.
What do you call it? Visceral?
Yeah, it's very visceral. It's because it's part of your being. It's not part of your ego. It's not part of your intellect. It's something that pulls you towards it. And you don't know what it's going to be until you experience it. But when Joseph Campbell called it follow your bliss. What are those things that are blissful to you? The things that just kind of wake you up and go, what was that? That you look at prodigies who are just drawn to it right away. Angelina Jordan, who I'm enthralled with, who started singing when she was singing Whitney Houston when she was 1.5 years old. She was singing jazz, complete Ellis Fitzgerald jazz when she was 5 and 6 years old. And that's all she just turned 16 years old. And she's the most stunning jazz singer I've ever heard. But that was her calling, but it came to her very early, and it was encouraged, and that's all she's followed. That's her calling. And she can do things that I didn't know a voice could do. But I see so many people in Hollywood that shouldn't be in Hollywood. And the problem there is that art and commerce don't mix. Commerce is about a product, sell a product. Art is not a product to be sold. Meaning the artistic process. It happens all the time. An artist is making, paintings that are now selling, and he gets it. Those two are so diametrically opposed structurally to each other that it creates discord. I was a senior in college, and an actor named Jeffrey Tambor. You'd recognize him if you don't know him. And he's had a very, very successful career. And he was a friend of the head of the Department of Theater at my college. And I was ready to go to Hollywood. Okay, here we go. I'm ready. This is what I'm going to do. And he came to our college, and there were only a very small college. There were only like 10 people who were graduating with a degree in theater. And he sat down with us, and he said, okay, because we all wanted to know what's it like. And he said, I have one thing I want to say before we talk about anything else. He goes, I want you to think right now, honestly, if there's anything else in your life, any other thing that you think, God, I'd really like to do that, or that would be fun. I'd really enjoy doing that. If you have something like that, do it. Don't do this. Do that. Because this is going to be a bitch. And if you're going to do this, you got to do it because you can't do anything else. Because this calls you so completely that you have to act, whether you ever get paid for it in your entire life, you have to do it. So then go ahead and become an actor. And of course I went, well, he's not talking to me. But acting didn't call me. I didn't know that then, because I was out for this is just fun. They laugh when I'm on stage. And I didn't want to work for a living. I wanted to do something fun. So that was it. But I think I struggled a lot. I suffered a lot unnecessarily because of trying to make acting something I really wanted to do.
Because you were psychologically attracted to it,
Yeah,
potentially
yeah.
more than you were viscerally connected to it.
I was ego attracted to it. It was a way to be somebody. It was a way to show them, and I was fun, so why not? But it wasn't something that spoke to me. And I think I got pretty good at it, acting. I made a career out of it. But I ended up being fulfilled elsewhere. I went to the Himalayas and I led every year. I would lead treks to the Himalayas. I did all these other things that were really calling to, mostly adventure, and teach. I was always teaching.
In those Himalaya treks, was it like to get to someplace, or you just had awareness of the geography and it was more just like a trek through these, scenic scenarios? Like, what was the framework of those treks?
No, every trek I went on, I didn't repeat treks. So I never went somewhere that I had been to before. So it was an adventure for me as well. But I knew how to. No, I didn't. I just jumped in. My first time there was I needed a way to pay for it. So I said, well, if I put some people together who were willing to pay me to guide them, I could hire some people to do the guiding. And so it was just kind of threw it all together and see what happened.
Wow.
And it worked. And so then I was able to go, okay, now I got it. Now I can start guiding people. And because I just hired guides to do it. And I was just basically the administrator. But I don't think it's like my acting classes. Look at the people who study with me. I just had a workshop this last Saturday online, and there were 10 people. And the person that had been with me, studying with me, the shortest amount of time was 5 years. And everybody else was in the 10-year, 12-year range. And that happens with every single workshop. Because there's never a workshop that's the same. Every workshop is the brand new beast. Because every workshop builds upon the previous workshop. It's a growing process, not a result. I'm not like, okay, I have acting figured out. Now I'm going to teach you acting 101. And then I'll get that crew out and get another crew in and teach them acting 101. And no, I have to be doing the exact same process I'm asking you to do. I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to let's try this, and I'll be the guide because I have some experience to then draw upon. But we're going to try all this new stuff, and you're going to step in and go, okay, well, I'm going to trust him to guide me, so I'll jump off and try these scenes and these exercises, and we'll grow together and create something. And it'll be a journey, and then we'll go on to the next one. But and it's a living process. And I think that gets lost when someone's not following something that inspires them. It becomes living for a result, living for a thought, for an image, which is not living. It's like Willie Unsold said that life begins above 10,000 feet. I'm not going to get into that. But he did say that life is not worth living without risk. That if you're not risking, you're not living. You're just waiting to die. So risking is stepping into something where you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's what art is. Art does not know its outcome. And for me, art can be the artistic expression isn't just limited to classic forms of dance, music, painting, acting. Because what is art? Art is human expression within a form, but it could be plumbing. You know, it's like saying unskilled labor. That is, I hate that term. There's no such thing as unskilled labor. Let me see you go dig a ditch next to the guy that digs a ditch for a living. Let's see how long you last and how much ditch he's able to dig with half the effort, because he's skilled at digging ditches. And when he lets go in that flow and he knows his form, he knows how to do what to do with that shovel. He knows how to work that shovel with the least amount of effort for the most amount of dirt. And he lets go into that. He's an artist within that form, because it's human expression released without concern of the result within a form, within any form. That's what to live artistically. You know, I stopped by defining myself as an actor a long time ago and said, I'm not an actor, I'm an artist. I'm committed to living my life as an artist, which is not knowing what the outcome is going to be. And being an actor is just one form of being an artist, the form that I like. And then teaching is a form of artistry, and parenting is a form of artistry. It's a way of living, that living life as an artist is a way of life that causes you to commit to a form of letting go and moving into that which you do not know. End of train of thought.
Perfect. It stimulates me to ask in a framework of, you know, some things inspire, some things don't inspire, some things move us, some things don't. Who's someone's work out in the world that's happening right now that is really lighting you up, or that when you see it, it really just sparks you and you're like, wow, I didn't see that shit coming? Or, you know, I don't know if there's like a teacher, I forgot her name. Every time you tell me about her workshops, I get lit up. Ruth Zipporah. No,
yeah, Ruth Zipporah. Yeah, Ruth Zipporah lights me up. Because she's who I aspire to. She's 83, 84 now, maybe 85. And physically, I can't keep up with her. She's got 2 artificial hips, 2 artificial knees, and she dances 5-6 hours a day, every day. And she's brilliant, and she lives just on that cutting edge all the time. I mean, she's someone who is living the life in terms of there's no pretense. She is who she is, and she's living completely exposed, vulnerable, and yet fully engaged and driving forward at all times.
I would call that fully reflective.
Yeah, she is. Yet there's no thought about it.
Well, no, especially
the reflection is in the being.
Is in the embodiment.
Yeah.
Well, it's specifically for her style of work as well, dealing so much with maybe could you say a bit about what her style of work is? Obviously it has to do with the body, but how would you describe her work?
Her work is human communication. What is the core of human communication? And she's broken it down. She's been teaching for 50 years, 55 years, I think. And she breaks human communication down into 3 forms. All human communication is a combination of these 3 forms: movement, sound, and speech. That all human communication is a combination of 1 or 3 of those elements. You could be just movement. It could be just sound. Oh! Is a communication. You know, language is a communication. Movement is a communication. So she breaks them down into individual components to where you're going to do a scene, and all of her stuff is improv. All of her work is improvisational. They're never working with text. But she may have you do a scene, a scenario, an improv only using movement. and that's all you can communicate with, or only moving sound, or then going back between sound and movement, and a combination of the three, and creates, for me, what is the foundation of human communication. She explores each one of those, those singular components that, and the reason I'm so entranced with her is I take that work and that's what sits underneath the work that we're doing. That if you can become familiar with working in sound and in movement and in speech as a way of communicating, be comfortable with breaking them apart and putting them together, and you put that under text work, you can soar to a whole different level. So I think she's doing work that is cutting edge, and that she's been doing it for a long time, and nobody's, except for a very small circle, is really much aware of it. So she inspires me tremendously. Another one on the other end of the spectrum is Alex Honnold. Alex Honnold, he's not the greatest climber in the world, but he's the one who has been able to focus and release and accept death more than any other. He's the man, who climbed El Capitan with no ropes, only chalk bag in his shoes. Now that's 3,600 vertical feet, where any mistake is death. And yet he climbed it with pure joy and ease. And 3 hours and 56 minutes of every single movement was one that could lead to his death. But there's such an acceptance and such an understanding, and that one with his skill, to where he could release mind and just flow with his body in the form that he knows so well, to be able, he got to the top and he went, wow, that was great. I could go do it again right now. It wasn't this big thing that he had done. He said, no, if I ever get adrenaline, if I get adrenalized on the rock, and I get adrenalized on the rock all the time, but he's at such a level that if he gets adrenalized, then something's wrong. When he's climbing, everything should be just calm and cool, and he's just floating on the rock. So he's someone I look up to. He's someone that sparks me, that he's taken this realm of something I love, which is climbing, to another world, to another level.
Now you have a story of like you were on a mountain, you were on a, and he like, can you say that?
Yeah, he showed up. Well, it's funny because I was in Yosemite Valley in 1980. I remember because it was the year St. Helens blew, and we were having earthquakes in Yosemite Valley. And I was climbing with a partner that I met there in the valley. I was living there just to climb, and I was 300 feet off the ground, and I was leading the pitch. So I'm putting in the gear and I'm leading the rope, putting the rope up. And I hear a voice below me that says, excuse me, do you mind if I climb through? And I'm taken aback, and I look down, and there's this man who's no ropes, just shoes and a chalk bag. And I went, no, please. And he goes, hi, I'm John. And I said, Stephen, nice to meet you. And he disappeared above me. And he was just out on his morning warm-up of 500 vertical feet, which was going to take me, 4 hours. He did in about 15, 20 minutes. But that was John Backer. And he's the king. He's the first one in the world that really took free soloing, which is without ropes, to the big walls. It's the first one to ever do that. So and then about 5 years ago, so that was 1980. So like 5 years ago, I'm 1,000 feet off the ground in the Red Rocks in Nevada. And exactly the same thing happens. I'm leading a pitch and I hear this voice, excuse me, do you mind if I climb through? And I look down and it's Alex Honnold. And I went, oh my God, you're Alex Honnold. And he said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt your climb. I'll be gone in just a second. And it was a wonderful moment for me because this were the two ends of the spectrum. But there would be no Alex Honnold without John Backer.
John probably sparked young Alex.
Oh yeah, no, that's the lineage. There's lineage of everything. Everything has lineage. Everything flows from one to the next. So we do not stand anywhere but on the shoulders of those who came before. And then we take it to the next level. Backer could not do what Alex is doing now. But there will be somebody in 20 years from now that will do something that Alex could never have done.
Take it further and further, the baton.
Yeah, the baton is constantly passed.
Yeah.
Being is effortless. Being, I say this in class, stop acting, stop trying to do the scene, stop trying to make anything happen. The scene would be greatly served if you just said the lines as written without any interference from your mind at all. The piece would be well served. But everybody tries to make something, to take it beyond what they are, and that's the problem. The ego wants to go beyond the being. The life is about being, not about thinking, not about projecting. Life happens presently, right? And as we say, we say in class all the time, your thinking mind is not present. It's never been present. It wouldn't know what to do if it got present. Your thinking mind is in the past, and it projects onto the future. Your body is always present. Your body experiences the direct experience of its life, of your being having that experience. And then your mind has a thought about what just happened, and it projects on the future. Oh, I got to do that again. But it was never present. So, and that's the problem. That's the duality, being and ego. So that being itself is effortless. You and I sitting here exchanging these ideas is effortless. That any activity, only it takes the amount of effort it takes to do it. Yes, it takes energy to stand up. It's going to take the energy it takes to stand up. But the being inside that energy is effortless. So life is effortless, and we try to do too much as opposed to just be. Doesn't mean you can't do things, but you don't have to push anything in your life or on stage. There's nothing to push. I'm teaching a class right now, and the class is called How to Utilize, what is it? I can't remember the name of the class now. Yeah. You'll like this one. Accessing and utilizing all of your personality in your work.
That sounds fun.
And it's like, well, okay, what is that? I wrote down, what is your personality? Your personality is the essential qualities that you were born with, and that you have built upon as you've grown. The undefinable curiosities, drives, and proclivities that have been with you as long as you can remember. The collection of your natural tendencies. Now, you can bring that to your work, job's done. Meaning that you, the essence that came out of the womb, had a personality, not an ego, a personality, an essence, a quality. And if you can bring your quality, there's nobody that has your quality. You bring your quality, your essence, without hindering, without pulling back, without holding back, just letting it go in your life and in your art. If you can do it in your life, you can do it in your art. And if you can end up doing it in your art, you can do it in your life, because they are the same. You can't separate art from life. They are the same thing. What holds you back in your life holds you back in your art. And they feed each other. It's the great thing about art, is a discovery in art opens you up in your life, and vice versa. But all that is that class is no different than any other class. It's just get out of your own way. Stop trying to make it happen and just do it. It's so simple that it's difficult, because we want to try to make something more out of it. And that's why I think I can only talk about what I've experienced. I don't talk from theory. This has been my experience, and I've been in my way, and I keep trying now to get out of my way. And that's really the only pursuit, and then engage with people along the way to try to keep it simple. I mean, it's fun to discuss, but that's an intellectual exercise. And if it leads to, but I find that, I begin every workshop with, I talk for an hour about, this is what we're doing, this is what we're going to be, this is what we're, but you can't learn from that, because learning is doing. It's the experience of it. But
those talks prime everyone's framework to be receptive to what's
they give a
about to happen.
frame, right. But, and then when something does happen, there's a point of reference. Oh, that's what he was talking about. Okay, so that because if you can have, an amazing moment in a scene, but have no idea how you got there and no idea how to do it again, because it's a state of being that you were able to get into, but you have no idea how to go back there again. So we talk on these concepts and these ideas so that we can set up the environment for which something might happen again. But setting up the environment is always about stripping away, so that the expression can come out unhindered.
More and more towards what's pure, and less encumbered by the framework itself.
Yeah. Because the framework will hold it. You don't have to worry about it. It's like actors trying to tell the author's story. Like, oh, I read the script, I understand the script, and then I deliver that message and that idea that the author wanted to the audience. It's like, that's not your job. That's already happened. The author did that. They wrote it. If they hear those words out of your mouth, the audience will get what the author had intended, no matter how you say the line. Your job is to bring it alive, is to bring a living quality to it, which is going to be different than what's on the page. It's not your job to deliver anything. It's not the actor's job to interpret anything. It's your job to go out and risk being seen in the attempt to accomplish a task within imaginary circumstances.
That sounds like it directly applies to living life as well. Risk being seen.
It's the same thing. See, and that's what, all I try to do is teaching acting is, because Shambhala Buddhism, my introduction to Buddhism, leading treks in Nepal, brought me to Shambhala Buddhism. And Shambhala Buddhism was a practice that was secular. It didn't have the Buddhist God trappings. It was just about what is it to be human. In fact, the course is called Shambhala, the Art of Being Human. Let's take a look at what is it to be human? How does a human work? And once I went through Shambhala training, I went, why are we studying all these abstract ideas about acting? Why aren't we just being human? So my approach to actors work has always been about just be human. That's just practice being human within imaginary circumstances. Well, let's practice the things that make us human instead of all the intellectual garbage that we put on top of it.
I'm learning sign language right now, and this means amazing or
Okay.
wonderful. But interestingly enough, it also means Sunday. So I was like,
Oh, really?
how do you say you're having an amazing Sunday? Just because it's a delta? I guess it's contextual. But yeah, everything you said, it's like about minimizing the framework and being more utility. It's like in design when something stands out and it doesn't feel like it belongs, or it doesn't feel like it, or even if something's meant to pop out, but the idea of like form following function. And I guess it's just about, for me at least, like lessening the amount of mental calories that's involved, lessening the amount of unnecessary work that's involved. How simple can we get this expression or this articulation? How condensed and how clear can we get this moment? And I was just talking about with this group of artists that I'm engaging with right now, it's like, if we can have deep, consensual, mutual coherence on like an unspoken level, because we've talked about what about this and what about that? What about in this situation? Are you okay with that? Or like, are you okay with doing this kind of thing with these kind of keys or these kind of chord progressions? Or you're not really in the mood? If we have those talks and have that framework that allows us to not need framework, then it's like, for me, it's like, yeah, this is what integral framework is all about. It's inclusive of everything. And if you have these moments in life as well where your framework can't integrate it or it can't include it, it's kind of a reflection of like, well, that's a little glitch in our system that it sounds like that's, you can be in denial right there, or that's not super coherent with the rest of, does everybody feel like that? No. And getting everybody, getting those moments of, yeah, right? Okay, yes. It's like understood viscerally. It's understood it's comprehended at a level that it stops needing language to talk about it, because it's understood on a pre-language level.
Right. It's pure. It's the simplest form of communication or of presentation. I mean, look at an F1, a Formula One car. Here's a vehicle that is designed so precisely to travel at 230 miles an hour within inches of another car going 230 miles an hour. And they keep getting it more and more refined. It keeps getting faster and faster and lighter. And they spend, every year, the whole off season, which just began, the whole off season now whittling and tightening and making it more and more pure, more and more pure. And it really is less is more. I'm studying right now in the gym because I'm living in Oregon now, and the climbing is completely different than California. It's completely different because everything in Southern California or in Southwest America is what we call slab climbing, which means it's less than vertical. It isn't dead vertical. It's just slightly less than vertical. Whereas everything up here is vertical or more. So you have to climb completely different. The techniques are different. Everything is different. So I'm studying every day. I go in and I practice to learn how to efficiently move mass vertically in an overhanging environment. And it's down to the simplest thing. Like, okay, if I hold a hold like this, I'm going to use less energy than if I hold it like this. Now, if on a slab, I'm going to hold it like this, but not in a vertical place. I need to come at, it's like an F1, that it's just whittling down is what is the least amount of effort necessary. Let's get rid of all the garbage to have the purest expression within a form. And you said form and function, and I think it's the other way around. I think it's function in form.
Yeah.
They were whittling down the form, and then allowing the function to happen within the form. for me, the form is priority, at least now. It changes as I grow. But right now, the way I look at it is that form is the priority, that we release inside the form. So we have imaginary circumstances as an actor. Well, those imaginary circumstances are the form that holds your expression, and you release into it without idea of where it's going to go. But yet the form holds you. You still have this dialogue. You still have these circumstances. That you can't just go, well, I know it says it's in LA, but I want it to be in the desert of the Sahara. And, well, no, it's not where it is. You have to buy the form. You have to commit to the form. Now you can let go inside that form. And that car, that F1 car, is a form. And now Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen can let go inside that form and do what they do, which is drive like nobody can drive, and put that function inside the form. And I think form takes the priority. Without the form, the expression is not, there's nowhere for it to go. There's nothing for it to. Even improvisation has form. Okay, you're a guy on the street who's homeless. Go. All right, I've got a form I can play off of. Otherwise, it's just noise.
We talked about also how tightening form can paradoxically expand the expression.
Yes, most definitely. I think the tighter the form, the more expansive the expression. That's the challenge. That's the delight of an exploration of how can I bear to the bone and actually communicate more. The more you, and this is just dynamically, the more you speed up the outside, the inside quiets down. And the more you quiet the outside, the more the inside speeds up. So when you tighten the form, there's so much more expansiveness that takes place internally that can come out through. That's why less is more. On the outside, the more you pull it in, keep it simple, the more the inside goes, and the more expression. And you watch someone like Anthony Hopkins, Robert Duvall, who do nothing on the outside, and yet you see an entire world taking place inside them. So yeah, that's the pursuit. That's what I'm trying to do on the rock, is do less. Because if I don't do less, I won't be able to hang on because it's overhanging. So I have to find ways to do less.
The term that's come up here and there in recent time is 0 point. It's like the most.
Sorry, my phone interrupted.
Oh.
So I didn't hear you. The term that's come up, what?
The term that's come up is 0 point, where it's like, there's a yogic word for it, is like bindu or drishti. And it's like the most, like if I'm looking right here at this screen, it's like the smallest measurement of pixelation on my screen possible. Like as small and tight as focus can be, that, and the highest expression that's available to that unit of measurement. People like to apply kind of like a spiritual lensing to something like what Kobe Bryant did. It's like it's incredibly dedicated focus, but also it allows and provides pliability within the expression, and yet an incredibly tight form and focus, and to the point where identity dissolves. Flailing or wasted noise, energy dissolves, and there's just pure tone. There's just the signal of expression, and it seems to, whenever that happens, regardless of the medium, sports, art, wherever, that energy cuts through the world like a lightning bolt, and everyone wants to watch it, whether it's an artist or whatever.
It becomes completely compelling. And the reason being is because it is connected. It is what is most real. in human form. When someone is in that state, they are 100% compelling. You can't take your eyes off of them. You're drawn to them completely because they are fully connected. What I mean by fully connected, integrated, is the thinking mind is no longer participating. And that's what we all strive for. We all want to be connected again to the universe. We're separated by that duality. We all want to be the bird again. And we can achieve that by releasing through an artistic form, because we have the skill. We develop the skills to be able to release into the skills and let them take over, so that we experience oneness. We experience complete reconnection with the flow of the universe, as brief as it may be, and we crave it. And so we want to do it again. We want to do it again. And I've experienced that in most commonly in three forms of my life: teaching, acting, and rock climbing. Those are the play, and that's why I'm always drawn back. Those things call me, and acting not as much, but I've experienced it in acting where there's been a complete release and I don't even remember going through it. It just happened. And yet the audience was like blown away. And I'm like, I have no idea what I did. Because being identity, was no longer involved in the process.
I've described it recently as like, I disappeared.
Yeah.
I dissolved into this activity.
And there's no greater experience in life, because we're no longer separate from the rest of the universe.
It's like this incredibly high expression of love in the most simple human form possible.
Yeah, it is integrated. There's no separation anymore. Duality no longer exists. For that short period of time, we see God. Because that's, for me, that's what God is. God is being fully integrated with the rest of the universe, and I'm no longer separated from the moon and the stars and the birds and the worms. That we are one again.
Pure, unaltered clarity, presence.
Yeah. That's, and that's what I think was, I wrote down earlier when I was looking at your notes from the day, I wrote down Western religion works from ideals set outside of oneself to aspire to. You are fucked at birth. You got to find your way to salvation. It's outside of you, right? Eastern philosophy focuses on opening up within you that which was already there. And I think that simplistic releasing of all the garbage and all the baggage, what everybody else says, and all the stuff you think and collect in your intellect, when you release that and there's just being, you are God. And that for an Eastern point of view is, that Western point of view is God is outside. And an Eastern point of view is, no, it's God. God's within. You are God. You just don't recognize it.
Which as a full kind of wrap up to everything that's been mentioned here is like, by finding framework that's able to allow for its own dissolution, its own dissolving in moments of, call it transcendental connectedness, you as an identity that's separate from who you really are dissolves, and what is becomes transparent to itself, and in its own moment, call it enlightenment or call it
that's integration for me.
Yeah, I would say that is for me as well. I've had that happen a couple times, and it's like the rest of it is just awe around these buds that blossom, and then the work that I'm addicted to is the integration, and then talking about it, and then reflecting on it. It's like, wow, how'd that affect you, and hearing how that moment altered someone else's moment or atonement or journey, and how the scenario that all of us come into, got the body, got the mind, got an identity, got some trauma. What do you do with what you got? And how someone's experience of that identity that is prior to psychological identity, it's an identity that's kind of without the need for identity. It's essential identity. It's isness. It is this primordial consciousness that when it is untouched, it sings like one of those singing bowls in a way that rings everything